Thank you for that, Drs. Tellem and Al-Saidi, our two program chairs. It's a privilege to be able to co-moderate this session together with Dr. Dimick from the University of Michigan. We're actually great friends and colleagues, so there's really not going to be a lot of controversy and hopefully not too much disagreement. We have an exciting panel coming up with a number of really thought leaders in the field of leadership. And I don't think there is a better time to discuss leadership than in the midst of a crisis. And I think today we're going to be exploring a number of principles and tenets, some of which are old and some which are going to be new, that enhance the likelihood of success of a leader or someone who might want to be a leader. So this Master's Leadership and Development panel is called Failing Forward into Leadership, Introduction to Leadership During Crisis. So John Maxwell, what got you here may not get you there, has a very well-known quote: "Failing forward is the ability to get back up after you've been knocked down, learn from your mistake, and move forward in a better direction." And I think in that one quote, he really captures a lot of what many of us have experienced over the last challenging year and a half. So it's going to be a three-part session. I'd just like to navigate you through it at a high level. The first part of our session is called the Leadership During Crisis. And this is the team of panelists who will be speaking to you. So starting on your left, I'm Julie Ann Sosa. I'm the chair of the Department of Surgery at UCSF, and indeed it was in San Francisco and the Bay Area where we saw the first COVID patient. Then Dr. Mellinger will be speaking. He is the chief of the Division of General Surgery. He is a professor, an endowed professor, and he is vice chair at Southern Illinois University. He'll be followed by the first of two Dr. Matthews. There's B. Matthews, I feel like it's The Bachelor, B. Matthews and J. Matthews. Dr. Brent Matthews is the chair of surgery at Carolinas Medical Center and Atrium Health. And he will be followed by someone who needs no introduction to this audience, Professor Leanne Feldman, Surgeon-in-Chief at McGill in Montreal. So when Drs. Tellem and Al-Saidi first asked us to put together a panel about leadership, it was a long time ago, it seems. It seems like a different era and a different epoch. And we delivered our proposal to them back in November or December of 2020. And at that time, we had only part of this epidemiologic curve. So it seemed to us we could start with me talking about what to do when your job suddenly changes and you pivot from being a strategist thinking about expansion and growth and maybe small things to thinking about a pandemic with not a lot of resources, prioritizing safety first. We anticipated that we would go into a pandemic perhaps not as big or as long as it ultimately proved to be. And so Dr. Mellinger will be talking about the challenges of leading during a pandemic. And of course, we're optimists at heart. And so we thought, of course, we will come out of this pandemic. And so Dr. B. Matthews is going to be talking about leadership as you emerge from a crisis or a pandemic. But of course, what none of us had anticipated is the challenges of leading when you emerge and then re-submerge into a pandemic. And it'll be interesting to revisit epidemiology in another year to see if leadership will have to flex and extend again. So as Albert Einstein would say, assumptions are made and most assumptions are wrong. The point being, don't make assumptions. So after this first part of the panel about leadership during crisis, we'll then pivot and talk about failure as a crucible for developing leadership skills. And this portion of the panel will be led by Dr. Dimmick from the University of Michigan. He'll be joined by Dr. Carla Pugh from Stanford, well-known educator, innovator in the field of surgical education. She'll be followed by Andrew Ibrahim from the University of Michigan, an assistant professor there. And many of you, of course, know Dr. Ibrahim for his innovation and discovery around design. And finally, Dr. Leslie Dossett, a surgical oncologist at the University of Michigan, will finish up this portion of the session. And last but not least, we'll all get together for a moderated discussion about silver linings led by Dr. Jeff Matthews, the chair of surgery at the University of Chicago.